Hello biology students, and welcome to video 2 of the circulatory system unit. So today we're going to be focusing on blood vessels, those vessels that carry blood around our body. So first, the human circulatory system is a closed system, which means for the most part things don't really get in or out. And blood is contained in this system, and blood cannot leave because it's a closed system. And blood's either in the heart or in blood vessels. And these blood vessels basically act as a highway around our entire body to help the blood flow, and it only flows in one direction. So it's crazy to think about, but you actually have about 60,000 miles of blood vessels in your body, which is enough to circle the Earth 2.5 times. And you may think, well, how is this possible? And it's because they're so small that if you laid them all end to end, they would really traverse quite a distance. One red blood cell in your body goes about 1,400 miles. It travels about 1,400 times through the body in one day. So it's really traveling 60,000 times 1,400 miles in one day. And the kind of vessels it might go through include arteries, arterioles, which are little arteries, capillaries, venules, which are little veins, and veins. Okay, so let's talk about arteries first. So arteries begin with an A, and away begins with an A. So all arteries go away from the heart. And because the blood is just leaving the heart, the blood pressure in arteries is super high because as the heart pumps, it pushes the blood really fast, has a lot of pressure, and arteries are just leaving the heart. So arteries have high blood pressure. So because they have high blood pressure, it's really important that they have very elastic, bendy, muscular walls that will expand and contract as blood surges through it as the heart pumps. So because the blood pressure is so high, arteries have to be able to expand and contract to work with that high blood pressure. One note is that every single artery in your body has oxygen-rich blood, has oxygenated blood, except for the pulmonary artery. And if you think about this, remember the pulmonary artery is going from the heart to the lungs to get oxygen, so it kind of makes sense that the blood in the pulmonary artery is not oxygenated. But in every other case, we would color those vessels in red as oxygenated. Okay, so these little boxes are supposed to be arrows. Sometimes the PowerPoints don't transfer correctly. So arteries, once blood leaves arteries, they go into littler arteries called arterioles, and then once the blood leaves the arterioles, they go into capillaries, which are the smallest blood vessels. So capillaries, like I just said, are the smallest of the blood vessels. In fact, they're so small, they're only 1 cell thick. That's tiny. And this is actually useful because they're so thin that a diffusion between the blood system and fluid surrounding the cells, called interstitial fluid, is really easy, because it's really easy to diffuse things when they're very small and thin. Okay, so here's a picture of a capillary, an actual picture from a microscope. So you can see these red things in here. That's a red blood cell, and it's about the thickness of the capillary. Capillaries are very, very thin. So you can see this is a muscle, and you can see this is the capillary bringing blood to the muscle. So you can see it'd be really easy for oxygen to diffuse out of the capillary into these muscle cells here. Okay, so capillaries are actually where almost all diffusion in your body takes place. They don't happen in arteries and arterioles. They happen in capillaries. And because we need diffusion to take place, it's important that blood's moving slowly through the capillaries. As it moves slowly, we have enough time for diffusion to happen. And the reason blood moves so slowly through the capillaries is because if you think about it, if you took all the capillaries together and stuck them together, they would have a much bigger diameter than an arteriole that they branched off from. So basically, there's more room for the blood to flow in capillaries. Even though they're thin, there's more of them. So because you have the same amount of blood in a larger space, if you add up all the capillaries together, you're going to have slower flow and less blood pressure. Okay? So there are a lot of different ways material can diffuse in and out of the blood in the capillaries. So transfer of materials between blood and interstitial fluid, remember interstitial fluid is that fluid that surrounds our cells, can happen by leaking through clefts. So things can literally leak out the clefts or the gap in between the cells, in and out of the blood cells. They can diffuse right through the walls of the capillary. Blood pressure could force things out. We saw that in the glomerulus in the Bowman's capsule in the excretory unit that we just saw. Blood pressure can force things out of capillaries into some structure. And also things can move via active transport via things like endo and exocytosis. Okay, so now after, we've gone from arteries to arterioles to capillaries, and then we got a bunch of diffusion happening in the capillaries, and eventually those blood vessels have to make it back to the heart. So from capillaries, the capillaries converge together to form a bigger structure called a venule, which is a small vein, and then those venules merge together to form larger structures called veins. And veins carry blood back to the heart. And that blood is usually deoxygenated because usually the oxygen was dropped off at cells in the capillaries. Okay, so at this point in veins, the blood pressure is almost close to zero. Remember, the reason we have blood pressure is because blood was pumped really fast out of the heart when it entered the arteries. Well, at this point, we're pretty far away from those arteries. So now the blood is really slowed down and our pressure is near zero. So you kind of think, like, how in the world do you get that blood back to your heart if there's no pressure pushing it along? And the way this works is almost all the veins in your body are sandwiched or are stuck in between different muscles. So as you move around and as you flex those muscles, the muscles actually pinch your veins and literally squeeze the blood back towards your heart. So here's this picture down here. This might be a leg, and as this person walks, the leg muscles would contract and squeeze, and it would push the blood along the vein. So because veins require skeletal muscles to push the blood along them, they have a bunch of valves. So basically, as you squeeze the muscle, these valves open, allowing the blood to flow through, and then when the muscle relaxes, the valve closes to prevent the blood from falling back down and losing all the progress it just made. So that's kind of how it might work in your legs, but we also have to have ways to move blood through veins in other parts of our body. So another example might be, as you're breathing, you're pushing, your lungs are expanding and pushing on the veins in your chest cavity. Is another example as well. Okay, so here's a picture of the exact same thing. So you can see here when your legs are relaxed, these valves are closed so the blood does not fall back down your leg. But then when you walk, the muscles squeeze your vein and the blood moves up to the next chamber. And then your muscle relaxes and it's stuck in the chamber, and then, your muscle would contract and move up again to the next chamber. So you might have heard when you're on an airplane, it's really important to move your legs around a bunch and not to sit for too long. And that's because if you aren't moving, your blood's really not flowing. And if your blood's not flowing, it's pretty easy to get a blood clot. So basically now the entire system is we have arteries carrying blood away from the heart. They branch into smaller arterioles, which branch into capillaries, where I get loss of oxygen and diffusion. And then these capillaries merge back into venules, and then finally into larger veins that bring blood back to the heart. So my heart would be right here, and I would have a little system going round and round. Okay, so here's another picture showing the exact same thing. So here I have an artery, which is very elastic, can contract a lot, breaking into arterioles, and then I have my capillaries where diffusion takes place, and those merge into venules, and then back into veins to go back to the heart. Okay, and again, one more time, here's the complete circuit showing you that process: arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins. So I like this picture because, as you've probably figured out, it's not like you have one net of capillaries that cover your whole body. You have different capillaries in different parts of your body. So maybe the blood leaves the heart via the arteries and the arteriole, and then one arteriole might go to, this might be the capillaries around your liver, and these might be the capillaries around your kidney, and these might be the capillaries around your feet, okay? And then they all merge back together into the central vein in your body, which is the vena cava. So that's it for video 2. We'll see you in video 3.